Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to a very historic night here on Thursday night. Uh, Tonight, we are about to witness some history. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes for people to log in, and then we will get started here. So, thank you all for joining us. We'll just give it another minute, and people will be joining us, and we will get started with this historic evening. Tonight is the moon launch. It's the fourth. The Israel will become the fourth country to ever land on the moon, and they are about to take off tonight at 8:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will be live streaming it. So stay tuned. We're just going to give it another minute, and we will let people join this video, and then we'll get started. Okay. So again, tonight is a very historic evening. We are going to be broadcasting live from Cape Canaveral, Florida. A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket will be launching into space at 8:45 this evening. Now, aboard the rocket is a bunch of supplies for outer space. There are satellites aboard, and there are other scientific equipment. But the main big thing that everyone is watching tonight is aboard this SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket is a spaceship. Now, this spaceship is about the size, it's a little bigger than a dishwasher. It's about the size of a smart car. And it was created by three Israeli entrepreneurs. About 10 years ago, they got the idea and they decided to take part in the Google Lunar X Prize. And the Google Lunar X Prize was created in 2007. Way back in 2007, Google was offering $20 million to the first group who could build a ship that could go to the moon and could take pictures and send those pictures back. And so lots of people applied, including this from all countries all around the world. And nobody could meet the deadline. And Google kept pushing the deadline back, and still nobody met the deadline. And finally, in January 2018, Google called off and said, "You know what? We're not going to be offering the cash prize anymore." But there was a group from Israel. It's called the SpaceIL team. The SpaceIL team was building this spaceship, and they were about 90% done. So they decided, even though the Google Lunar X Prize was over, they were still going to keep going. So throughout 2018, they hunkered down in their factory in Israel, and they kept on working on the spaceship. And late in 2018, they finished the spaceship. Now, this spaceship they decided to call Beresheet, which is the Hebrew word for Genesis, in the beginning. So it's very apropos that it's happening tonight. So for those of you just joining us, we're about to watch a historic launch to the moon tonight. There has only been, in the entire history of space travel, there has only been 3 countries that have gone to the moon. Those 3 countries are Russia, the United States, and China. Actually, the Soviet Union, the United States, and China. The United States one we're all familiar with. Happened 50 years ago today. 50 years ago this year. We're celebrating in July. We're going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the historic moon launch of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, who landed on the moon in their famous Apollo 11 mission. You all remember the pictures with the American flag and the Neil Armstrong's footprint in the moon. So that's happening. That was 50 years ago this year. And now tonight, in about 20 minutes, we are going to witness history as the 4th country to ever land on the moon will be taking off tonight from Cape Canaveral, Florida. And that country is Israel, a tiny Mediterranean country which is about the size of New Jersey. Very small country, yet they're known as the startup nation, very technologically proficient, and they are attempting to make history tonight with this spaceship. Another interesting historical marker happening tonight, besides Israel becoming the 4th country to ever land on the moon, is that this is the first time in history that we are witnessing interplanetary travel that is privately funded. So anytime we've ever had astronauts land on the moon, it's been from NASA, it's been like a government funded project. But tonight, for the first time ever, we are going to witness a privately funded trip to the moon. We've seen privately funded trips to space, Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson and Elon Musk. They are all working on trips to space, but this is the first time we're going to witness a privately funded ship that will actually land on another planet. And so they did this by raising $100 million in private donations, and that's how this trip is being funded. And if you think about it, $100 million for a spaceship to go to the moon is actually, in the big scheme of things, relatively speaking, is not that expensive. So it was all done. It was all done with private donations. So this is the first time we're seeing interplanetary travel that's privately funded. So there's two historic firsts tonight. So one of the ways they were able to make this so cost efficient is they are, instead of launching their own ship into space, they are hitching a ride, almost like an Uber carpool. They are hitching a ride on a SpaceX rocket that's launching at 8:45 this evening. In about 18 minutes, we're going to watch it live. And I'll go off the screen and we'll just go straight to the SpaceX launching pad, and we're going to watch this live. And you won't have to listen to me talk over it. We'll just listen to the SpaceX people. But so they decided that they're going to hitch a ride on this rocket that's already going into space. Normally, it takes a spaceship about 3 days to get to the moon. But since they're hitching a ride, they're going, and in about 9:15, about 30 minutes after the takeoff, the spaceship, the Israeli spaceship, will detach from the SpaceX rocket and will begin its long solo journey to the moon. And so the SpaceX rocket is not really bringing it that close to the moon. It's just bringing it to outer space. So it's not bringing it that close, which means once the ship detaches from the Falcon 9 rocket at about 9:15, 9:18 tonight, about 33, 34 minutes after takeoff, it still has to travel by itself all the way to the moon. So that journey will take 7 weeks. So the spaceship that's launching tonight, the historic spaceship that will put Israel as the 4th country to ever land on the moon, will take 7 weeks once it leaves Earth tonight. And that will bring it to the moon at approximately April 11th. So we're going to be keeping our eyes on it for the next 7 weeks. Tonight in Israel, right now it's 3:30 in the morning Israel time. The country is wide awake. There are watch parties happening from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. People are up in their pajamas watching this. At the Israeli Space Agency is a wide awake right now. They're all monitoring. And at about 2 minutes after the ship detaches. So if it detaches, if everything goes as planned, it'll detach it. It'll launch at 8:45. It'll detach from the SpaceX rocket at 9:18. And about 2 minutes later, it will start sending a signal, a beeping signal, back to the crew on Earth at Cape Canaveral in Florida and at the Israel Space Agency in Israel. So that's what we're going to be watching closely tonight. Those are some landmark moments we're going to be waiting for. And if everything goes as planned, then right now they're beginning to chill the engine prior to the launch. So we're going to be seeing that momentarily. Now, what's interesting, again, for those of you just joining us, we are about to witness lunar history as Israel attempts to become only the 4th country to ever land on the moon after the Soviet Union, the United States, and Russia. Israel hopes to become the 4th country to ever land on the moon. And what else is historic tonight? It is the first time a spaceship will travel to another planet that is privately funded, not funded by a government, but is privately funded by donations. So space enthusiasts are watching this gleefully and with delight tonight to see what happens. There is also a time capsule aboard this spaceship. It will arrive on the moon, as I said a few minutes ago. It'll arrive on the moon at around mid-April, hopefully around April 11th, if all goes as planned. And it hopes to do a bunch of scientific experiments. It's going to be testing some of the atmosphere on the moon as well. It will be taking videos and photos. It will actually be taking a selfie of itself, and it will be sending all of that information back to the scientists on Earth. And as I said, there is a time capsule aboard. And in this time capsule are 3 digital discs, and on those discs are lots of files. And those files include a lot, because Israel is sending this spaceship. It's sending a lot of things from Israel. So they had a bunch of children draw pictures. Israeli children draw pictures of the moon, of space. They put MP3 files of Israeli songs. And they are sending works of Israeli art and literature, as well as photos of Israeli landscape. So that will be in the time capsule. Now, this is a one-way trip to the moon. So fellow moon travelers who go a year from now, a decade from now, 20 years from now, will still see this small spaceship sitting on the surface of the moon. It does not plan on returning back to Earth. So this is a one-way trip, and future space travelers will find it. Again, this spaceship that's launching tonight is aboard a SpaceX rocket that is basically providing, it's a carpal driver into space. And it is taking a bunch of space equipment, satellites into space. And it is also taking this small Israeli spaceship. Basically, it's bigger than a dishwasher, but a little smaller than a smart car. That's how small it is. And that will be attempting to land on the moon, making Israel only the 4th country to ever land on the moon. And what's interesting is that Israeli space technology, one of the reasons they can do this is because it is a small spaceship, and that is an Israeli specialty. So I'm going to be signing off. We're going to watch the live feed of the launch of the rocket, and then we'll see if Israel can become the 4th country to ever land on the moon.
Headquarters in
for more
California.
coverage, check out fromthegrapevine.com. There's lots of stories there about the history of this mission. We have interviews with some of the people who helped make this mission possible. We have photos. We have information about the time capsule. So check that out at fromthegrapevine.com. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Indonesian satellite operator PT Pacific Satellite Nusantara Satu. The Nusantara Satu satellite is Indonesia's first high-throughput satellite that will serve to improve internet connectivity in the region. 2 additional payloads will be riding along on today's mission, including Israel's first lunar spacecraft and an experimental microsat for the U.S. Air Force Research Lab. Tonight's launch window is 32 minutes long. We're aiming for the top of that window. If we're unable to launch tonight, someone calls a hold. Our backup window opens up tomorrow night at 8:41 p.m. Eastern. We're currently at T-minus 10.5 minutes until launch. All systems are go currently at Cape Canaveral.
My name is Jessie Anderson, and I'm a manufacturing engineer here at SpaceX. Right now, you're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 at Space Launch Complex 40 in Cape Canaveral, Florida, as it awaits its 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time launch. The 2-stage Falcon 9 rocket stands 70 meters tall. That's greater than the wingspan of a 747 aircraft. The first stage, which is the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle, is the booster, which has 9 Merlin engines that do the bulk of the work to get Falcon 9 off the ground and up into the thinner parts of the Earth's atmosphere. Now, this will be the 2nd time that we have flown a booster for the 3rd time. And looking at the vehicle here, you can still see the soot from the previous flights. Today, we will be attempting to recover the first stage for the 3rd time on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, which is currently stationed about 350 nautical miles off the coast of Florida. This first stage will face some of the most challenging re-entry conditions to date, which will make this a tough one to bring back, but if we're successful tonight, this will be SpaceX's 34th successful landing. Now above the first stage is the second stage right here, which has a single Merlin vacuum or MVAC engine, which ignites after the first stage separates. The second stage is what will bring the Nusantara Sat-2 satellite to geostationary transfer orbit, or what we like to call GTO. And speaking of the satellite, it is safely enclosed inside of the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, which is this pointed cone at the very top of the vehicle. This protects the payload from aerothermal loads, heating, and contamination during ascent. But once we've reached the vacuum of space, we no longer need them, so we will jettison the fairing as the second stage continues on its journey to orbit. That's a quick look at the launch vehicle. Now let's check back in with Kate for the latest activity on the launch pad.
Falcon 9 rolled out to the pad with the payload early this morning and went vertical around 6 a.m. local time. The chief engineer held a technical poll at T-1 hour, and launch director held a propellant load and launch go, no-go poll at T-38 minutes. Falcon 9 uses rocket-grade kerosene, which you might hear us call RP1, for its fuel, and liquid oxygen, or LOX, as the oxidizer. With fuel and oxidizer on hand, we need an ignition source to complete the fire triangle. For this, Falcon 9 uses TTEB, which you will see at T-0 via the telltale green spark right before the rocket takes off. Currently, fuel is nearly fully loaded on stage 1, and it is completely full on stage 2. Liquid oxygen looks to be about 85% complete on stage 1 and about 50% complete on stage 2. Once all tanks are full, both stages will continue to be topped off with propellant load until T-2 minutes to keep the temperatures as cold as possible. Low temperatures lead to a denser propellant, and that allows us to fit more propellant into the tanks of the rocket. In addition to the RP1 and LOX on board, Falcon 9 also uses helium, and that's to keep the tanks pressurized in flight and the propellant flowing correctly into the engines without air bubbles as the propellants deplete. Helium load began before the webcast went live, and it will continue to top off until a minute and a half before launch. Engine chill procedures have begun, and that's when we open the pre-valves between the first stage prop tanks and the 9 Merlin engines. This allows a little bit of the cold liquid oxygen to flow into the turbopumps, which brings them down to a temperature close to that of flight temperatures. The super chilled propellant will soon be flowing through those engines at liftoff. So the vehicle remains healthy. We're currently tracking no issues. The payload is on internal power, also tracking no issues. The last weather balloon was launched just a few minutes ago, and it looks like we're within load limits. There have been chances of isolated showers across the Space Coast today, so there was a 20% chance that those cumulus clouds were going to violate our launch weather conditions, but currently everything is looking good for launch. The range is green and is prepared to support today's mission. So with that, all systems continue to be go. Again, today's launch window is 32 minutes long, so if we can't launch right at the top of that period, our backup window will become available tomorrow, Friday, February 22nd.
As Kate mentioned, the payloads being launched tonight are for our customer SSL and include Indonesia's Nusantara Sat-2 satellite. This satellite will bring better connectivity to the region, including improved internet, data, and voice communications. Once it enters service, the satellite will have the potential to more than double the number of people who have access to this connectivity. Here's more from our customer on how this satellite will improve the life for the people of Indonesia.
PSN-6 is a very important spacecraft to us. It will provide the first broadband capacity over Indonesia, and I guess the first one in our part of the world to do that. We hope that this is the beginning of a long-term relations and beneficial to both of us.
included in tonight's mission is Israel's first lunar lander for SpaceIL and Israel Aerospace Industries. This lander will be the world's first privately funded spacecraft to reach the moon. Its mission is to transmit photos and video of its new home and conduct tests of the environment. An interesting fact about this lander is that it will be using its own power to travel to the moon, which will take nearly 2 months. Now let's check in with Kate for our final status update before liftoff.
We're currently at T-minus 3 minutes and 37 seconds from liftoff. Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of countdown. The first and second stages are both nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. The first stage should finish prop loading around T-minus 3 minutes and the second stage at T-minus 2 minutes. We're approaching T0, so let's listen in on the countdown net momentarily. Now, at the T-minus 60 seconds mark, be sure to listen for the call out that Falcon 9 is in startup. This means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. The New Centaurus Sat-2 payload continues to be healthy. The F9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. Weather's looking good. Range is green. Let's listen in now.
Stage 2 launch load is closed down. Falcon 9 is on internal power. Gas ready. Falcon 9 is in startup. Stage 2 pressing for flight.
Go for launch.
Stage 1 pressing for flight.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion stopping.
Allowing telemetry nominal.
So at T plus 47 seconds into flight, everything is looking nominal. We're currently preparing to throttle down as we enter max Q.
Vehicle supersonic. Vehicle has reached maximum aerodynamic pressure.
So there you just heard we passed through max Q. We will now throttle back up.
MVAC engine chill.
There you heard the call out for MVAC engine chill. This is the point in which, like I mentioned before, we start to flow the super cold liquid oxygen into the turbopumps, bringing them down to flight temperatures. This helps us reduce the temperature difference between the liquid oxygen and the hardware. Everything looking good with stage 1 trajectory. Main engine cutoff. MECO 1 approaching now.
MECO.
And there on your screen you can see that the second stage engine has lit the gorgeous red orange glow of that nozzle. We're now at T plus 3 minutes and 5 seconds into flight. Coming up next will be fairing deployment. Now that second stage is in the vacuum of space, we don't need the fairing anymore, so in order to improve our vehicle efficiency, we shed the extra weight. Let's check in on the status of the Falcon 9 booster.
Bearing separation confirmed.
And there you can see on your screen deployment of fairing.
Bermuda acquisition of signal.
While Stage 2 is doing its job, Stage 1 will be coming back home to Earth, and it will also execute 2 burns, the first of which is the entry burn. First stage is traveling at roughly 2,300 meters per second, and this 3-engine burn helps to slow the stage down. The second of the Stage 1 burns is called the landing burn. This is a single-engine burn that brings the vehicle speed down rapidly from about 250 meters per second all the way down to 2 meters per second in order to gently land on the drone ship. As I mentioned earlier, for this mission, first stage re-entry conditions are predicted to be the most challenging for any recovery attempt to date. It is possible that we might lose our camera feed during the landing attempt due to the drone ship's position over the horizon, but if that happens, we will bring you an update as soon as we reestablish connection. Stage 1 landing should occur about 25 seconds following second stage engine cutoff. The entry burn will be coming up here in about 2 minutes. It is T plus 5 minutes and 27 seconds, and we're just under a minute until the entry burn begins.
Stage 2 on nominal trajectory.
So on your left screen, you can see the first stage coming down, and you'll see a bright light when the entry burn begins there. We're just about 25 seconds away from entry burn. And you can also see on your right screen the second stage.
Stage 1 FTS is safe.
Stage 1 entry startup.
And their entry burn has begun. This should last about 18 seconds.
Stage 1 entry burn. Shutdown.
And entry burn is complete for first stage. Next, coming up at about T+8 minutes will be a rapid series of events. This will include the first second stage engine cutoff, or SECO-1, the start of the landing burn, followed by the first stage landing. SECO-1 and the landing burn will occur within 4 seconds of each other, followed by the stage 1 landing shortly after that. And we are at T+7 minutes and 22 seconds, so we're just under a minute to SECO-1.
Terminal guidance.
Stage 1 entry transonic.
And that second stage engine is glowing bright there. When SECO-1 starts, that engine will turn off.
Stage 2 FTS is safe.
Stage 1 landing startup.
We have SECO-1.
Okay, shut down.
Stage 1 landing weight deployed.
It sounds like, there you go on your screen, we do have a successful first stage landing, despite the challenging conditions there. And we also got confirmation of stage 2 in good orbit. Now we are about to enter the coast phase, so we are going to take a quick break, but we will be leaving you with an animation that shows you where we are in the coast phase. We will be back at about T+26 minutes for second stage relight and the first deployment.
Thank you.
Historic moon launch tonight. Right now, we are in a quiet period where we're just waiting for the next stage to occur. So stick around because there's still more excitement to come. Just to regroup here, we are watching the launch of the first. This will be the fourth spaceship to ever land on the moon. We've had the Soviet Union, the United States, and China have previously landed on the moon, and tonight we are witnessing history as Israel is attempting to send a spaceship to the moon. So that's what we've been watching so far tonight. The spaceship took off on a beautiful weather down in Cape Canaveral, Florida. It was beautiful weather down there, and the spaceship took off. Everything looked like it is going well, and everything looked like it's going well. And right now we're in a quiet period where we're waiting for the next stage to occur. Coming up at about 9:18 p.m. in about 18 minutes, if everything goes as planned, the Beresheet spaceship, that's the Israeli spaceship, should be detaching from the rocket. So wait till 9:18 p.m. and we will hopefully see the Beresheet rocket detach from the SpaceX rocket. So that's what we're waiting for right now. So far, everything has gone well with this historic mission. Israel is attempting to become only the fourth nation to ever land on the moon. This is exciting because it's the first privately funded interplanetary travel. It's not funded by government. It was funded by $100 million in private donations. So stick with us for a few more minutes as we watch and look forward to 9:18 p.m. when the Beresheet spaceship is supposed to detach from the rocket.
Welcome back to the webcast. MVAC-D on our second stage has begun engine chill, and it is about to briefly reignite for the second and final burn of tonight's mission. And then it will begin deployment of today's payloads. First will be SpaceIL, and then the new Centaurus SAT-2 satellite. As we mentioned earlier, another payload will be riding along on today's mission, an experimental small satellite for the U.S. Air Force Research Lab, but we won't be able to catch footage of that particular deployment this evening. We'll see a second engine start at T plus 27 minutes, and it'll be burning over Gabon for, oh, it's burning right now, there we go, lit. So you can see that gorgeous glow. It's burning over Gabon now for about a minute, and then we'll have second engine cutoff around T plus 28 minutes, 7 seconds. Approaching SECO 2 in 10 seconds.
MVAC shutdown.
And confirmation of MVAC shutdown there as that red glow and confirmation that the MVAC shut down there as that red glow slowly begins to fade away. Now we're just going to wait until we have good orbit. And we just had confirmation that stage 2 is in a good orbit. So at this point, we'll be coasting for the next 5 minutes or so, and we will be back just after T plus 33 minutes.
are coming up on our first deployment of the night, the SpaceIL lunar lander, in just about 10 seconds from now, 18 seconds from now. Now you should be able to see this on your screen.
SpaceIL spacecraft separation confirmed.
And we've got confirmation of separation. And you can kind of see that there on your screen. It's a little bit bright there because of the sun, so it's very difficult to see separation there, but we've had a successful deployment of the SpaceIL lunar lander, a first non-governmental lander to make its way to the moon. Here's a little more insight on its journey to space.
Spaceflight makes getting to space easy and affordable. We have years of experience helping customers execute their missions, providing rideshare on nearly every launch vehicle in the world. Our team supports you through every aspect of your mission, from design and licensing to integration, launch, and deployment. We're proud to take SpaceIL on this historic mission to the moon.
In the beginning, I was only an idea, a dream, a fantasy. I was born in a bar to 3 fathers. Soon, I met the rest of my family. I had people who took care of me and helped me grow, and I grew and became stronger. When I met the president of our country, he told me that I carry with me the hopes and dreams of a nation. And he was right. Landing on the moon is not my only mission. I will carry with me a magnetometer to study the magnetic fields of the moon. But one of my most important missions is to inspire our kids so they can dream and explore new worlds. And my mission begins today. A couple of weeks ago, I left home and got on a plane to Cape Canaveral. I had hundreds of talented people who worked hard to prepare me for this day. I waited long enough for this moment, and I am ready. Yada, let's get to the moon.
What an exciting mission and day for SpaceIL. As Jesse mentioned earlier, that is the first privately funded lunar lander, so congratulations to the SpaceIL team. We wish your lander all the luck as it makes its way to the moon. Now we have a short 8-minute coast before we deploy New Centaurus Sat-2, so we'll take one more quick break during this time. Stay with us. We'll be back around T plus 43.5 minutes. Welcome back to the webcast at T plus 43.5 minutes. We're about a minute away from deployment of the new Centaurus SAT-2 satellite. If you've just joined us, we've had a really great day so far. Beautiful liftoff from Cape Canaveral, a successful landing of a rather spicy landing attempt on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. Great deployment of the SpaceIL lunar lander just about a few minutes ago, and now we're just waiting for our our last deployment that we'll be able to see today, new Centaurus SAT-2. So that'll be coming up just in a few seconds. Seconds away from deployment. And there you can see on your screen visual confirmation of deployment for the new Centaurus satellite. And with that, that brings our webcast to a close this evening. Thanks to SSL, PT Telkom Indonesia, SpaceIL, and Israel Aerospace Industries for entrusting us with tonight's mission. Thank you also to the 45th Space Wing for range safety and to the FAA for licensing today's launch.
And we'd also like to thank all of you, our viewers, for tuning in tonight. Follow our website and social media platforms for updates on our next missions and milestones. Until next time, have a good night.